Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you have not done so, please sign in on the sign-in form located in the chat box. You can also use the sign-in form to ask any questions throughout the meeting. It will be live the whole time. If you have a question or having difficulty connecting or hearing, please let me know through the chat box. Thank you.
the
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will get started in just a few minutes. Everyone has been muted upon entry into the meeting. If you have not signed in yet, if you could please do so on the form link in the chat box. It's also the form to ask any questions that you have about the project. This form will be live throughout the meeting, so you can ask questions as the meeting goes on. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. If you have not done so, please sign in on the sign-in link in the chat box. The sign-in link is also the question form. If you have questions, please click on that link and use that form to submit your questions. They will be read throughout the Q&A portion after the presentation. This form will be live throughout the whole presentation and question portion, so you can ask all the questions you would like during this presentation. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We are about to get started. Please sign in on the sign-in sheet that is located in the chat box. If you would like to ask questions, please use that form in the chat box to submit your questions. You can ask questions throughout the meeting. The form will be live the entire time. We're going to have the presentation and then a Q&A portion afterwards. So please sign in and please ask your questions on that form. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for a public meeting to discuss the River Road Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study. I'm Erin Teague, an engineer with the San Antonio River Authority. Please forgive me for not having my camera on tonight, but we found that sometimes everyone having their camera on can cause internet connectivity issues. We're sorry that we're not meeting in person. We would much rather be coming to you with a public meeting face-to-face, but we're going to do our best tonight to keep everyone safe and involved in this public process by using the technology that we have available. We appreciate your patience during any potential technology snafus. As you join the meeting, everyone was muted by default, so please also consider turning off your webcam in order to ensure a smooth internet connection. You can do that by hitting that center white button with the camera icon. As we go through the presentation, we encourage you to utilize the Google form to submit questions as they come to mind. In the upper right-hand part of your GoToMeeting screen is a chat icon, and there you will find a link to a Google form. And you can submit your questions throughout the presentation. We have Caitlin monitoring those questions and grouping them in subject matter categories so that we can smoothly answer them at the end of the presentation. So again, thank you for joining us from wherever you are, be it at home or, like many of us, through a late night at the office. The project team comes to you virtually tonight from throughout the US, including our core team staff who are joining us from Fort Worth and Galveston, Texas, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Little Rock, Arkansas. And then right here at home in San Antonio, we have River Authority staff, City of San Antonio staff, and Bexar County staff. All of this to say, we know it's not ideal to be meeting on this platform for a public meeting, but we thank you for joining us and ask you to help us make the best of this situation. So we have several elected officials or their staff with us this evening. If you represent an elected official this evening, would you please type your name and your boss into the chat box so that we can recognize you? And while they're doing that, I'd like to acknowledge the San Antonio River Authority Board of Directors who are present, my bosses. We have Ms. Lourdes Galvan, Ms. Deb Bullner-Crow, and Mr. Jim Campbell. And our elected officials, Caitlin, have we had anyone?
No
sign
one,
in on the chat?
no one has signed in on the chat yet, but I will keep an eye out and we will be sure to shout them out if they do.
Okay, thank you. I'd also like to thank personnel from the City of San Antonio and Bexar County. There's a lot of people who have joined, so I'm sure I'm going to miss someone. So I apologize in advance, but we all have Bill Pinnell from the City of San Antonio and several others. Before we get started with the presentation, I would again like to thank you for joining us. As you know, the San Antonio River Authority is the local sponsor for this Army Corps of Engineers feasibility study, which was designed to determine whether it was even feasible through different measures to improve the aquatic and riparian habitat of this section of the San Antonio River. So at this point in time, the Corps of Engineers have determined that it is indeed feasible to improve the aquatic and riparian habitat through different measures. The next step is to begin to design those measures in actual relation to the realities on the ground of this section of the river. There's going to be many opportunities for additional feedback through that future design phase. So just to make sure everyone understands, the feasibility study that you're going to hear about tonight has only concluded that it is feasible to improve the aquatic ecosystem through present day aquatic and riparian ecosystem restoration techniques, and has identified techniques and project elements which qualify for future design and construction funding under the Corps Section 206 Continuing Authorities Program. This federal program is specifically allocated for aquatic ecosystem restoration projects. So the tentatively selected plan you're going to see tonight reflects the guidelines and limitations of this funding source. Now, many of you may remember that the River Authority has attempted 2 earlier projects along this stretch of the river. This current effort is the furthest that we've been able to continue the conversation. So thank you for sticking with us. We've hit a great milestone tonight. What you're seeing tonight is the 3rd public meeting on this feasibility study, which is nearing completion. The previous 2 public meetings gave the public an opportunity to comment and ask questions about the concepts that you're going to see. The Corps team has taken into account your comments and questions in order to guide their formulation and selection of a plan for potential future funding. We understand that it might be difficult for you to comment based on the conceptual nature of this tentatively selected plan. However, please realize that the successful completion of the feasibility phase where we are now is a necessary step that will allow the Corps and the River Authority to advance towards that future design and construction phase. When we move to that future design and construction phase, we're going to be coming back to you throughout that process to get your comments and your feedback on those design details and particulars. So with that, I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the website following the meeting. Also, the slides presented this evening and the Corps of Engineers draft feasibility report are available on the website to review or download. Thank you, and I'm going to turn the substance of the meeting over to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers team. With us tonight, we have the project manager, Ms. Zia Burns, who will give us an overview of the project and the funding program, and then Ms. Justice Watson, a biologist, who will explain the formulation of the tentatively selected plan within the feasibility study. Zia, it's all yours.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this public meeting. We have for the agenda for today, the purpose of the meeting is to describe the tentatively selected plan, what we will refer to as the TSP throughout this presentation. We'll provide some information about the project, background, the description of the project area, the public comments. We will discuss the alternative evaluated and how they combine to form the tentatively selected plan, the TSP. We will also discuss the recreational feature and the length and the issues associated with the public review period. Next slide, please. The project information. The River Road project is a Continuing Authorities Program project. We will refer to that as CAP, Continuing Authorities Program project. It's a Section 206. It's meant to address aquatic ecosystem restoration. CAP program is a project for plans for projects that have limited complexity, limited budget, and are accelerated format. The cost for this project is $5.9 million during the construction, the DNI phase. The slide has disappeared.
Zia, are you still there? Are you presenting?
I think this is one of our technical difficulties. So if you'll just have patience, we're going to try to get Zia back online. So real quick, while we get Zia online.
Forgive me, I'm back online. I got kicked off the platform.
There we go. You should be able to go.
All right, I cannot see the presentation anymore. I was wondering if everybody else can see it or if it's just me who has lost the display and cannot see the presentation.
Real quick, we're going to make sure it's there.
Super. Just to ensure that the public is following what we're talking about. Otherwise, I can go off without the slide.
Zia, why don't you continue and we'll just make sure, there we go, that it's available.
Yes, ma'am. So what I was talking about is what the project was about. It's an aquatic ecosystem restoration that it's a CAP program. The CAP projects are used to implement a project that have limited size, limited scope, limited complexity, and in an accelerated fashion. The non-federal sponsor for this project is the San Antonio River Authority. And the project right now is in the feasibility phase. The project is, the whole process is split into two phases. The first phase is the feasibility phase. The second phase is the design and the implementation. Funding of this project is different depending on the phase that we are in. During the feasibility phase, like where we are right now, it is 50-50%, federal government and the non-federal sponsor share. The first $100,000 are funded federally only without cost share required from the non-federal sponsor. When we go to the design and implementation, the cost share is 65-35, 65% federal.
God damn it.
And 35 is non-federal funding. The recreational features, because this project includes recreational features, when we go through the design and implementation phase, it will be 50-50. And I have to mention that the recreational feature are only can be the maximum of 10% of the federal cost. The operation and maintenance that follows after the completion of the project is 100% the responsibility of the non-federal sponsor. The project first cost is $5.99 million. It's $5.9 million. That is first cost. It is the estimate at this point. And at this point, I turn the presentation to my colleague, Justice Watson, to present the project area and the TSP technical information. Thank you for having me.
Can everybody see the PowerPoint now?
It's
Yes.
quite, yeah, very visible.
Yes.
Okay, so what you should be seeing on your screen is the study area. Just a quick reminder for everybody to submit their comments during the presentation via the Google form in the chat box. As you can see on the screen, the entire River Road study area is within the city limits of San Antonio, Texas, in Bexar County. The study area is bounded by East Mulberry Avenue and US Highway 281. It is adjacent to a residential neighborhood in the Breckenridge Park Golf Course and is approximately 1 mile in length. The aquatic ecosystem along the River Road segment of the San Antonio River is severely degraded. This section of the river has become susceptible to the problems listed on the screen. Severe lack of vegetation adjacent to the river, lack of pool, roof, or run features for aquatic habitat, limited habitat diversity due to an abundance of invasive species. River Road and Avenue A that run parallel to the channel have constrained the river, and there's reduced bank protection due to human disturbance to the riparian corridor. Riparian represents vegetation near the water. There are a few opportunities within this project area. First is to restore function and structure to the aquatic ecosystem, provide additional recreation benefits to the community, improve water quality in the San Antonio River through ecosystem restoration, and reduce erosive threats to public infrastructure. We had a few planning constraints that were considered during our planning formulation process. First being to avoid removing pedestrian access to the study area and also avoid removing access to the golf course maintenance building. Figure 1 depicts the existing erosion within the project area. As you can see, some of the banks have severe drop-offs and are heavily impacted by erosion. Figure 2 is very representative of the project area and shows invasive calla lilies. I would like to add that invasive species occupy up to 60 to 80% of this stretch of the San Antonio River. On the bottom right of the slide, you will see Figure 3, which is a conceptual design of a step pool feature and the potential aesthetic changes on the river. I think it is important to state that we have heard you during all of our public scoping processes. We have consolidated the comments from previous public meetings, and we wanted to highlight the top considerations. In addition to this, you can find all of the written comments that were submitted and the USACE and SARA responses in Appendix C5 of the main report. The number one desire was to maintain access across the river. USACE concurs with this, and it was included as part of our planning constraints through the installation of pedestrian bridges. There was a desire for the use of native vegetation, and this consideration falls in line with our policy and the funding of the project. We took the parking recommendations into careful consideration, but as a result of the study, we did not identify additional parking within the study area that could be brought forward into the subsequent design phase. However, there have been communication between the San Antonio River Authority and the City of San Antonio to address potential safety concerns for visitors accessing the project area. The focus of this meeting is to discuss the tentatively selected plan, or TSP. However, there are a plethora of options, about 45 plans that were considered and evaluated during the plan formulation process. Now, during this presentation, you will see a lot of conceptual designs, and as Aaron mentioned before, more detail will be determined during the design process. While considering all the constraints and adverse impacts, we had to discuss the low water crossings, human disturbance, erosion and sedimentation, the reduced riparian corridor, River Road, and Avenue A. It is our assumption that the adverse conditions in the area will continue into the future if the project is not implemented. All the public comments from the previous meetings were considered, and some will be implemented into the project. In order to develop plans, our team evaluated different alternatives to ensure compliance with the requirements of the federal funding program. Alternative 1 was in-stream modification. This alternative was considered to address the significant pooling, stress on the riverbanks, and lack of pool riffle run features in the study area. The options evaluated for this alternative involved removing 1 to 3 low water crossings and replacing them with pedestrian bridges. This alternative evaluated the placement of in-stream structures, native species plantings, invasive species management, and geolifts, which are features to assist with bank and vegetation stabilization. Alternative 2, Avenue A modification. This alternative was considered to address human disturbance in width of the riparian corridor. Vehicular access will not be permitted and will be restricted to hiking and biking if this alternative is implemented. Any portion of the road that is removed would be replaced with native soil and replanted with native species. It would also include invasive species management. The alternative evaluated the addition of an 8-foot wide ADA-compliant asphalt path, beginning where Avenue A has been removed and ending at East Woodlawn Avenue. I'd like to state if the local community would like to upgrade this path and elect to fund an upgrade, there are options available to do so. In order to follow the planning constraints of golf course maintenance access, options were evaluated to expand the existing golf course path to the western boundary of Avenue A outside of the restoration areas. Alternative 3, River Road relocation. This alternative was considered because of Davis Park's inclusion within the floodplain and the opportunity to expand the riparian corridor. This alternative includes native species plantings and invasive species management in Davis Park. The team compared the effects of relocating a portion of River Road to the original alignment of Allison Drive. During public scoping, the realignment of River Road was not a favorable option. This was taken into account while selecting a plan. Because of the cost effectiveness and habitat modeling and the unfavorable public opinion, the relocation of River Road was screened out of further consideration. As you can see on the screen, these are the areas that are proposed as part of the tentatively selected plan. The figures on the screen represent the different aspects of the TSP. The major points to take away from the TSP are that all 3 low water crossings in the study area will be removed and replaced with bridges. River Road will not be relocated and the original alignment will stay in place. Avenue A will be removed and vehicular access will be blocked at East Mulberry Avenue. An 8-foot wide ADA compliant asphalt path will be installed. Restoration in-stream structures will be incorporated into the project. Native species and invasive species management will occur in all of the green areas, as well as within the river itself, as shown in blue. And there will be some minor bank sculpting to ensure the success of in-stream structures and native species plantings, as shown in the figure on the right. The tentatively selected plan includes Alternative 1, in-stream modification, which means we would propose to replace all of the 3 low water crossings with bridges. Installation of in-stream structures, native species plantings and invasive species management within the river and along its banks. TSP also would include Alternative 2, Avenue A modification, which would replace Avenue A with soil and native vegetation, and expand the existing golf course path on the western boundary of the study area within Breckenridge Park Golf Course. Alternative 3, River Road relocation. I would please note that although Alternative 3 has River Road relocation within its title, this was purely for comparison purposes and River Road will not be relocated. This will be specifically focused on Davis Park, native species plantings, and invasive species management. Benefits of the proposed TSP. We expect that by removing the low water crossings, this will open the stream bed and provide better habitat for aquatic organisms and improve river flow. We expect improved cover and foraging opportunities for aquatic and terrestrial life through the plantings of native vegetation. The restored riparian corridor will decrease impacts from stormwater runoff, pollution, erosion, and sedimentation. Nesting structure for wildlife, including waterfowl, bats, and non-migratory game birds, will be added throughout the project area. We anticipate that during design, we'll be working with the San Antonio River Authority and the City of San Antonio to design a replanting plan that is commensurate to the invasive species removal. We have heard you during the public meetings and considered the request to maintain the sounds and aesthetics of the low water crossing at East Woodlawn. However, the low water crossing is a major contributing factor to problems within the study area. We wanted to ensure pedestrian access was still maintained across the river, which is why bridges were added in as project features. In addition, water flowing over the rocks of the proposed in-stream structures will mimic the sounds created by the low water crossing. In addition to ecosystem restoration features, there will also be improvement and modifications to recreation. Please note that these features will be dependent on the design process. We are proposing to install an 8-foot wide ADA compliant asphalt path, as you can see through the purple line on the eastern boundary of the study area. Bird blinds, which are represented on blue dots within the study area. We would like to add these throughout the project area to increase wildlife viewing ability for the public. In addition, we would like to propose the installation of fishing decks that would be appropriate for the current existing conditions and assist with directing usage of the area while also enhancing recreation opportunities. Educational signs that would provide directions, interpretive, and park use guidelines, and trash cans. As you see on the screen, any of the steps with a green check mark have been completed. So the team has completed alternative plan formulation, economic and environmental analysis of alternative plans, selection of the proposed tentatively selected plan, and we have undergone legal and internal review of our draft decision documents. Our next steps are to complete the public review of the draft decision document. Once we have finished the draft, we can move forward with completing the feasibility phase. There will be a 45-day public comment period, which began on November 10th, 2020, and will end December 28th, 2020. Draft documents, comment forms, and the presentation can be found at the link below. You may also Google River Road USACE, and that will the first item that will pop up will be this document. Please submit your written comments by December 28th, 2020. You do not have to utilize the USACE comment form. It is available for your convenience. You may email your comments to riverroader@usace.army.mil or mail them to the address listed below. Please note that this address is located in the notice of availability and the comment forms that are available on the USACE website. We will take a 5-minute break to submit your questions through the Google form. The presenters will review the questions and answer at the conclusion of the presentation.
Thank you, Justice. So we're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to submit their questions. As we go through, please remember to use the Google form that you can find the link in the chat box. So it is currently 6:28. So we'll have, give us a couple of moments and we'll have some answers to those questions at 6:33.
This is Arlene.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for submitting your questions. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Everyone will remain muted as we go through this question and answer process. If you would still like to ask questions, the form is in the chat box. Comments in the chat box will all be recorded. This whole meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the San Antonio River Authority website after this meeting. So we'll go ahead and get started with the first question, which is, has this project have been funded? If not, where is it in that process?
So we're going to answer that with two parts. Zia, would you please explain the core funding? While we're waiting for Zia, let me explain the local sponsor funding. So the San Antonio River Authority will be responsible for 35% of the restoration and 50% of the recreation elements for this project. That money is currently being proposed as a potential future effort under the Bexar County Rivers and Creeks program, which has recently been identified by Commissioner's Court. So we are hopeful that we can show the commissioners the value and that they will elect to fund this particular project through that process. The 65% would need to come from the core for the federal funding. And if we don't have Zia, Natalie, would you be able to provide some detail?
I'm back online.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the Army Corps of Engineers will be funding 65% of the project and 50% of the recreation. I keep getting echo. As for the funding for the design and implementation, the budget process focus on federal investment where it is most warranted within primary mission area of the Army Corps of Engineers to address the most significant risks to the public safety and to provide a high economic or environmental return to the nation. The fiscal year 21 President budget provides the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers a construction budget, and that budget includes the Continuing Authorities Program, CAP. The Corps of Engineers is waiting on the Army Civil Work Program for fiscal year 2021 work plan. The construction appropriation from the Congress to be released will be around March 2021. This project has been included in the CAP capability database for the design and implementation and will compete nationally for Section 206 aquatic ecosystem restoration funding. It is eligible for funding once a project partnership agreement is executed with our non-federal sponsor, the San Antonio River Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Zia. We will move on to the next question. What % of the vegetation will be removed during the invasives removal and restructuring of the riverbanks? What portion of the canopy will be removed during this phase?
Justice, would you like that one?
Yes, ma'am. So the goal of this project is to protect and stabilize the river. We will work with our design to ensure the environment is not negatively impacted, but please keep in mind that 60 to 80% of the study area is inundated with invasive species. But as I mentioned during the presentation, during our design phase, we will be working with a replanting design to ensure that any vegetation that is removed will be replanted accordingly with native species. We will not know what portion of the canopy will be removed until the design phase.
Thank you, Justice. The next question is, will bank sculpting call for removal of mature native trees? If so, where?
There may be some native trees that will be impacted by bank sculpting, But I want to assure you that this will be avoided to the maximum extent possible. Our goal is not to remove native vegetation, only to improve conditions for the existing native vegetation and promote more natural conditions for any new native vegetation established. When you go to the presentation, it was the figure on the right, and it was showing the bank sculpting in those areas that it would be focused in on.
Thank you, Justice. Another question, what will the density of new plantings be? Do we have modeling to show the regrowth after 1 year, 5 years, and 20 years?
Density of the plantings will be dependent on the amount of invasive species management that is required in the area. Like we've been mentioning, a lot of these details are going to be narrowed down in the design phase. There is a habitat modeling appendix as a part of the integrated feasibility study report and environmental assessment, but there's not currently any modeling to exhibit the visual growth at those timeframes.
I would like to jump in here and just mention that from previous experience with other restoration projects, after a year, it starts to fill out. 2 years, it starts to look pretty woolly, wild and woolly. At 5 years, you can barely tell that there was ever a project in the first place. And after 10, it looks like a riparian forest. So that's what we expect it to look like based on our previous experience.
Thank you, Erin and Justice. Next question, how will this restoration plan affect animals, species in the area, i.e. migratory birds?
We expect that there will be some temporary adverse impacts during construction. As everyone's aware, construction can have draw animals out of an area. But within a year or two, after construction has been completed, we fully expect that migratory birds will come back into the area. There will be plenty of habitat for aquatic and terrestrial species. So we expect a beneficial impact on wildlife as a result of this restoration project.
Thank you, Justice. Next question. Will vegetation in Allison/Davis Park and the open areas along the River Road between East Magnolia and Armour remain in conditions to permit continued picnicking, soccer games, dog walking, etc.?
So as a result of this, if this project is pushed through, there will still be some recreation in the area. I think the idea is to at least be able to throw a frisbee around. Please keep in mind that a whole soccer field is probably not going to be the goal of this restoration project. We will have a little bit of an open understory, which will be different. It's not going to have that same turfing aspect as a soccer field or recreational field, but we can have open meadows with native grasses with great shading from native trees that we plant.
Thank you. Next question is, I thought that we were going to be able to do a staged removal of invasive species. Are we concerned that by doing that, we're going to harm the habitat even more for other animals?
So staging or complete full-blown removal, that's going to have to be evaluated a little bit more in the design process. I will add that it is pretty hard to get rid of invasive species if you still have some lingerers around. But I guess I just want to assure everybody that we're trying to make sure that we have native vegetation in place so that we're not going to adversely affect wildlife habitat. But like I've mentioned, during construction, there will be some temporary impacts to wildlife.
Thank you. Someone asked, why isn't the path part of the recreational money so we don't have to find it in other places?
I'll jump in on this one. Just a clarification, the proposed project that has been identified as feasible would fund a asphalt path. However, COSA Parks has a standard that with a concrete path for hike bike trails. So the delta or the difference between the cost of the asphalt path to the concrete path would need to be found locally in order to make that upgrade, that local preference upgrade. So there will be funding for that basic path within the federal project, but locally we've already started to identify how we pay for that upgrade.
Thank you. Why is it necessary to remove the low water crossing when most of the environmental remediation could be accomplished with it in place?
So I don't think we'll be able to achieve the restoration goals if we still have the low water crossing, creating the excessive pooling. We won't be able to achieve some of those aquatic habitat goals. The low water crossing essentially acts as a low water dam, which has contributed to some of the erosion and other problems we're seeing. If we don't modify or replace the low water crossing to create natural stream flow, we're pretty much going to be facing an uphill battle as we continue with our efforts.
Thank you. What is the projected width and depth of the river at various points the low water crossing is removed? Will there be a pooling depth and beateth to support the current 10 to 16-inch bass population?
So we really won't know the exact pooling depth and breadth of these features until the design phase. But in general, species will probably shift from sport fishing to a little bit smaller species that can inhabit riffles. But I would like everybody to keep in mind with the in-stream structures that we're referring to, they're called pool, riffle, run features. So there will still be some pooling to allow for some bigger fish to exist in the area.
What evidence do we have that water quality is poor in this stretch, e.g. E. coli, oxygen, sediment, and what indices of water quality will be improved with this project?
So I'll jump in on this one. The San Antonio River Authority, as part of the Clean Rivers program with TCEQ, routinely monitors the water quality and biological activity within this area. We have a monitoring station immediately upstream of Woodlawn, and what we have found continuously is that the E. coli concentrations are in excess of the primary and secondary recreation standards. So it indicates that there is pollution at this point, and that does have some issues. In addition, it is in excess of the screening criteria for nutrients and has a low dissolved oxygen. As a result of that water quality, we see the impacts in the fish populations that we monitor. And unfortunately, this stretch, according to TCEQ guidelines, is non-supporting of a healthy diversity and population of fish species.
Thank you. Why is the low water crossing not considered as a cultural resource, given its significance as a National Youth Administration construction project?
Hi, this is Chris Davies. I'm the archaeologist on this project for the Corps of Engineers. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I always have to ask that question with these type of meetings. That's an excellent question. And we do consider the low water crossings historic structures. We entered into a programmatic agreement with the Texas State Historic Preservation Office, also known as the Texas Historical Commission. Also on that agreement was the San Antonio River Authority and the City of San Antonio. And the State Historic Preservation Office explicitly requested that when and if, if this project becomes feasible, when we do the cultural resources survey, we will not only be looking for archaeological sites, but the agreement had to explicitly say, and it does, that we would hire an architectural historian or an historic architect to survey those 3 low water crossings. And what they will do is do the research, historical research on them, and they will document them in the field, as well as any other historic structures that might be potentially impacted by the project. I'm not aware of any, but you never know. And so they will be on site doing that. What they will have to determine is, in consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office, and I know which crossing you're talking about, I've been to the project area, but we'll have to look at all 3 crossings. Is that crossing or any of the crossings eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, or is a contributing element to the National Historic District for which it resides in, which is the Brackenridge National Park Historic District? And if it does, if it is considered eligible for the National Register or a contributing element for the National Register, we have 3-step process that we go through in consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office. That 3 steps is avoid, minimize, and mitigate. Can that resource be avoided? And can we avoid any impacts to it? That's the first step. If not, we move to minimization. Can we minimize the impacts to that historic resource? In other words, are there other types of designs and things that we could look at? And if not, we move to what we call mitigation. And that includes, and just so you know, we're not just talking about the historic resources out there like the low water crossings. We're talking about the archaeological sites as well. So it's the same process: avoid, minimize, and mitigate. So if we come to that point where we think that, and this is a big if, this is, a lot of things have to fall into place for this, but I want to answer your question as succinctly as I can. If we decide that the low water crossing or a low water crossing or any of the low water crossings have to be removed that are considered eligible for the register or are considered a contributing element to a National Register district, they will have to go through a process of documentation and research that we call HABS-HAIR. That's an acronym. It stands for Historic American Building Survey / Historic American Engineering Record. And that requires very detailed research. It requires everything on acid-free paper, black and white photographs, color photographs, everything that the Library of Congress wants, because that's where it's going, that it will stay in perpetuity. Now, that is a long way down the line. We have to do the research first. Like I said, the State Historic Preservation Office requested that we put in the programmatic agreement that someone who meets the Secretary of Interior guidelines and standards for a historic architect or architectural historian will be doing the survey for those structures. So it's not like me going out there, which, I'm an archaeologist, I can dig in the ground, but when I look at stuff on the surface, I just scratch my head. So we're going to have somebody that is extremely qualified to do that. It's going to provide us with the information. And our agreement says, our programmatic agreement says, we go back to the State Historic Preservation Office and our other stakeholders, and we discuss it and how to proceed. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Chris. We will move on from there. Can we be assured that fishing piers and birding platforms will withstand the force of water and debris during heavy rain events?
So,
Go ahead, Justice.
sorry. I think this would be evaluated during the design phase. And obviously, if recreation features, if they're going to fail, then we're not going to install them. So I think we could always look at different designs, things of that nature. But if we don't want to waste the taxpayers' money on a feature that would not work appropriately, so that would be something that we'd evaluate more during the design phase.
Thank you. Can current populations of aquatic wildlife be protected during the construction period?
So the San Antonio River Authority has had a couple of conversations regarding this with the Corps of Engineers. The River Authority has a great team of fish biologists who routinely work with projects like this to either do relocates or implement protection measures. And we fully anticipate to help the Corps during both the design and the construction process in this manner.
Thank you. Will Avenue A be closed to Mulberry and golf course vehicles move to the path between Nines or parallel to the current Avenue A? If not, has the city been approached about moving the storage sheds?
So that is the goal of the project, to remove the vehicular access to Avenue A and convert Avenue A to a hike bike trail, which moves the golf course traffic onto the golf course path, which is the necessity of having the upgrade to the golf course path. So there will be golf course access with a different path and a lack of vehicular access to the east side of the river at this point.
Thank you. Why are boulders proposed between River Road and the river when the current bollards both keep vehicles on the pavement and match the rest of the park?
So the boulders have been proposed to ensure protection of our project features. So, bollards can be removed, they can be run over. Boulders were just to ensure that vehicles would not be able to access our restoration area and destroy vegetation.
Thank you, Justice. Let me see what the next one is. Has the homeless population been taken into consideration throughout this process? Will you be implementing homeless deterrent devices or make sure that it is not appealing to homeless people?
You know, that's one of the really good questions that a lot of projects are having to entertain. And we have talked with COSA Parks, and they've brought their experience with the park police and working with other parks to the table on this. And we're going to continue to work with them to understand what the best way to proceed with the project is. But that's really something that's going to be worked out in the design phase. But thank you very much for making sure that it's on our list of things to pay attention to during design.
Is there an option to leave Allison Park as it is and proceed with the rest?
Justice, can you give some context to how the tentatively selected plan is impacted?
Yes, ma'am. So with Davis Park, we evaluated, because it was within the floodplain, so it's getting flooded on a pretty substantial basis. We have evaluated, installing different types of vegetation. So like I mentioned during the presentation, we could have more open native grass meadows that would still allow recreation if that is a major concern. We want to install, you could have more shade trees with native vegetation and just like reducing the amount of stormwater runoff that could impact the area, impact River Road going across the road and into the river. So that is why we have included it in the project. And it's kind of it's a big contributor to the amount of, ecosystem restoration benefits we receive from the project as well.
Thank you, Justice. How have you considered moving River Road upstream of Allison? Oh, how is it that you have considered moving River Road upstream of Allison, but not below?
We considered moving a small section of River Road to the original or an old alignment of Allison Drive. And we considered that because of the restoration efforts that we would be conducting in Davis Park. So anything south of that, you know, that's all residential neighborhoods. So that's why we would not be moving any part of that road. But I will reiterate the fact that we are not going to relocate River Road. That is not a part of the project. It was just something that we considered, and it was not cost effective, and there were not many favorable opinions about moving that. So we screened that out of our process.
Thank you. Do you intend to remove any trees that are currently in Allison/Davis Park? You mentioned planting trees in this park, so I'm wondering if there's a planned removal.
So in Davis Allison Park, we would only remove it if it was an invasive species. If it's a native species, we're going to leave it in place.
The last question, what are the boundaries of the Bracken Ridge Park National Historic District?
This is Chris. Can I hear that question again, please?
The question is, what are the boundaries of the Bracken Ridge Park National Historic District?
I don't have that in front of me right now, but it is quite large. It includes the entirety of the Bracken Ridge Park. That includes the zoo area and like that. The National Historic, the form is a couple hundred pages long. It's one of the longest ones I've ever seen. It's an impressive park, and it's got everything from prehistory to history. The archaeological sites out there go to as far back as the Paleo-Indian period, all the way through Spanish colonization. So thousands of years of occupation, in the park, and all the lovely, historic resources that you see when walking around the park that was created by, everything from the CCC to Work Progress. So it's a large one, and you can get on Texas Historical Commission's THC's website, and that is available to the public. And you can go on there and search Bracken Ridge Park, and it'll show you everything you'd like to see.
Thank you. Next question. Will there be any art installations to mimic other sections of the river?
So as part of the Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mic. As part of the core project, we don't currently have any art installations planned as part of this project.
Thank you. And if Avenue A is closed to traffic, where do you want people to park?
That's a really good question. On the other side of Mulberry Avenue within Bracken Ridge Park, there are 17 parking spots within 1,000 feet of the project area. So we have been in conversations with with COSA Parks to identify how to create a smooth park patron experience from those parking spots into this section of the park. That includes signage, an improved pedestrian experience, and then a upgraded mid-block crossing across Mulberry to ensure safe access across the road. This was identified as the most feasible option given the constraints and the archaeological and historic resources within the area.
Thank you, Erin. Well, that was our last question, everyone. And I just want to say thank you so much for your participation this evening. It truly, truly warms my heart to see such a passionate group of people who really love the San Antonio River. This presentation, as I said before, has been recorded. All comments and questions have been recorded and will be posted on the River Road webpage on the San Antonio River Authority website. The questions will be grouped together and answered and then posted, and the recording will be posted this evening. If you have more questions, please feel free to use that link. It will be open for another 30 minutes. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for putting up with this technology challenges we have. I really appreciate that we have these devices to keep everyone safe and still keep the community involved. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.